Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made a funky 70s style crochet granny square duster cardigan with a faux fur trim. So this video isn't like a tutorial, but there are little aspects of tutorial in them, so if you want to stay tuned, I will show you how I personally made the granny squares that I used in my cardigan, and how I attached the faux fur collar, as well as how I attached all the squares and the whole cardigan together. So I was inspired to make this cardigan because I got an email from Pinterest of all people, and I like to get inspired on there from art, crochet, home decor, you know, like everybody, how everybody else uses Pinterest. That's how I use it too. And so I got this email one day that had this, it wasn't a duster cardigan, it was a regular size cardigan, probably about hip length, and it had crochet granny squares as well as a faux fur trim. And I was like, oh my god, that's so cute. So I pinned it, and of course when you pin something, Pinterest emails you similar things. I went a searching, I found a few other different types of this duster cardigan. I will show later in this video of the two that I could find and give credit to. So one is from a designer, and that's this tan one, and that's where I took inspiration for the granny squares because I really liked how those ones looked. The other one is from another designer. In the meantime, you can stick around, watch my video, see how it turns out, and thanks for being here, folks. And this is my inspo board. So here's the tan one on the left hand side, which I took most inspiration from. And on the right is the other option. So that's the Starfall Cardi by Nick Collage. And the tan one is Charlotte Simone. And that's by the designer Dora Maar. And first we're going to start off with a magic ring. So this is how I do mine. There's a few different ways to do it, and there's some pretty good tutorials here on YouTube. And then we're going to chain 4 and add 1 double crochet, chain 1, 1 double crochet, and we're going to repeat this for a total of 8 double crochet. And then we're going to pull it closed and slip stitch to the top of your first chain 3. Then we're going to cut and sew in our ends. For row 2, we're going to change colors and tie onto any space in between any double crochet, and then we're going to chain 4, and then in your next space add 1 double crochet, chain 2, then 1 double crochet, chain 1, and then 1 double crochet, chain 2. So every other one will be a chain 2, so we're sort of making a corner spaces, so there should be a total of 4 chain 2 spaces, total of 4 chain 1 spaces, and a total of 8 double crochet. After your last chain 2, slip stitch to the top of your first chain 3, cut and sew in ends. Row 3, tie on to any chain 1 space from previous row, and we're going to go ahead and chain 3. Then add 2 more double crochet in that same space, and in the following space, which should be your chain 2 space from previous, add 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. That will be our first of 4 corners. And then in the following space, you'll add 1 cluster of 3 double crochet, and we will continue this. So every chain 2 space from your previous row will be your corner in this row. So you'll add 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, and then the ones after and before that will just get 1 cluster of 3 double crochet. So this is our basic granny square pattern that we will be following from here on out. And your row 3 should have a total of 12 double crochet clusters. After your last double crochet, slip stitch to the top of your first chain 3, cut and sew in ends. For row 4, you tie on to any space after our corner, and then we're going to chain 3, and in that same space add 2 more double crochet, and we're going to continue the granny square pattern. So every corner will have 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, and the rest will get 1 cluster of 3 double crochet. And row 4 should have a total of 16 double crochet clusters. After your last double crochet, you will slip stitch to the top of your first chain 3, cut and sew in ends. And for row 5, we are continuing the granny square pattern, and we are tying on with a new color, and just repeat what we've been doing, but you should have a total of 20 double crochet clusters at the end of this row. And for our final row 6, I am using the base color, so this is my main color of my duster cardigan. Tie on, and we're going to repeat once again what we've been doing, the same exact granny square pattern, except you should have 24 double crochet clusters at the end of this row. And that's how I made my squares, and I used a total of 66 granny squares to make my cardigan. And for reference, I wear a size small. Now I'm going to show you how I chose to join my granny squares. I like this method because it made a nice flat seam. So we're going to join by having the right sides of your granny squares facing you, and we are going to be working in the back loops only. So on my right hand square, I'm going through the back loop of my first corner stitch, and then the same corresponding back loop of the other granny square opposite. And make sure you have your working thread in between, like how I have here in my left hand, and then you're going to go ahead and pull up that working yarn and go through all 3 loops on the hook. So we are just doing a slip stitch. So back loop, pull through and make a slip stitch, but make sure it's a more loose slip stitch. Do not do it tight, just loose, and it'll be nice and flat for you. So here's a close-up. We're going in the back loop only of our right hand square, back loop only of our left hand square, pull up the thread, pull through all loops on the hook to slip stitch, and we're going to do this all the way down. Once you make the end corner, the opposite corner, we're going to cut off. And this is what the seams will look like if you use this back loop method. Nice and flat. And here are my finished 2 front panels. Here is my joined back panel. And here are my 2 sleeves. And next we join everything together. And here's a template of how I attach them. So first I attached the 2 front panels to the back panel, but in order to have a neck hole, I only joined the front and back panels together by the 2 outermost granny squares. So the 2 innermost are left open, and you'll see a little bit better later. In this diagram, where the solid white lines are where I joined my panels together. And once those parts were joined together, then I folded it over like this. This is the back view. And where the green dashed lines are where I joined the rest of the cardigan together to close it up. And I joined the entire cardigan in the same back loop method that I showed you before. And this is the neck hole opening that I was talking about. I did not join these 4 squares, so there is a neck hole. And then here is where I joined the rest of the cardigan shut on both sides. And after my cardigan was all joined together, I started in the front neck loop, neck hole, but you can start wherever. And I just tied on, chained 1, and then I added a row of half double crochet around the entire border. So around the whole neck and both sides and down and around the back. And I also did this on the sleeves as well. And then once I reached the beginning, I slip stitched, and then I chained 2, and then I added a row of double crochet around the entire border, just like we did before, as well as on the sleeves. And here's our finished borders of half double crochet and double crochet. So here's what it looks like. And here's what my sleeve looks like. Next, I made my ribbings for my sleeves, and I made a slip knot and I chained 12, but this is all personal preference depending on how wide and long you want your ribbing to be. And you don't have to add ribbing, but it felt a little bit too breezy in my sleeve holes, so I decided to make ribbing to attach to both of my sleeves. Then in the second chain from the hook, I slip stitched, and I slip stitched all the way down, and I had a total of 11. Just make sure not to do them too tight while you're doing the slip stitch. At the end of the row, I chained 1 and turned my work, and then we're going to be working in the back loops only for the duration of this process. So you kind of have to turn it for this first row, and in the back stitch, the back loop only, I will make another slip stitch all the way down the row for a total of 11 slip stitches, and make sure to do these on the looser side as well, and that'll be easier for you to get your hook into the back loop. And at the end you chain 1, turn your work, and then work down in the back loops again, and you'll just keep repeating this until your desired length. And here's what it's looking like so far. And this is how long I made mine, and then I just joined it shut, and now it's ready to attach to my sleeve. And the way I attached my ribbing to my sleeve was very similar to the way I attached all of my granny squares and my entire cardigan together. So on my granny square side, I worked in the back loops only, and then on my ribbing cuff, I worked in those divots only. And my sleeves worked out perfectly to where I used 2 back loops on my granny square per divot. So each divot on my cuff was attached to 2 granny square back loops. And then I worked this way all the way around until the cuff was completely joined. And then with a tapestry needle, I stuck the threads on through to the inside so that I can sew in the ends that way, and they were hidden. So here's a closer look of what it looks like. So you can see where the little gaps are where the ribbing bumps up, and here's what they look like completed. And this is the yarn I used for the faux fur effect. Unfortunately, I have no idea what brand it is. I know I got it at Michael's like 7+ years ago. I think it might be acrylic, but any fluffy yarn similar to this will do. So what I did was cut out a bunch of 9-inch pieces, and each piece I divided up into 4 pieces. And actually I could have divided it even thinner because I ended up thinning it out a lot when I combed through because it was just a little bit too thick for me. So if you have this yarn or something similar, I would suggest making it a little thinner. And I started by attaching it to the collar. So on the outermost edge, I used this 10mm hook just because it was thick enough to grab that bundle of yarn through. And I used the hook to essentially poke through and anchor onto the yarn. So I sort of made it a little bit thinner, placed it over my hook, pulled it through, took it out, and then I used my fingers to go through the loop and grab the ends through to tie a knot. And I continued this process along the entire neck hole, down the front of the cardigan, and also along the bottom. And along the sleeves I did it a little bit different, but I'll show you when we get there. But I just continued in this method until it was all filled. And at this point I decided I wanted to make the collar a little more thick and fluffy since it folded over. And so what I did was, in our double crochet row, I grabbed my 10mm hook, I stuck it through and sort of grabbed around one double crochet, and then I grabbed the fluffy yarn, pulled that through, and we're working on the inside of the coat. So pulled that out, and then I tied it around that double crochet. So the double crochet is sort of in between and anchoring that fluffy part there. So I did this from collar to collar around the neck, and I skipped every other double crochet. So only every other double crochet has a fluffy yarn attached to it. And now we will work on the sleeves. So we're working on that double crochet layer as well. So I just stuck my hook through there around the double crochet, the same as we just did, pulled it through, took it off the hook, put my fingers through and grabbed those two tails to tie it around that double crochet. And I just did this all the way around, and I did skip every other double crochet here as well, so only every other double crochet receives one fluffy yarn. And here's what our sleeves look like. And as I mentioned earlier, I thinned it all out by hand combing. This is a little bit too thick for my taste, and I just went around the whole coat and combed out a good layer. And it also fluffs it up a bit. Alright guys, and that's how I made my duster crochet cardigan. I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for the reveal, and if you make this, please feel free to tag me on my socials. They'll be listed below or at the end of the video. And thanks for watching. Bye! And here are the final results. First some close-up shots, and I will show you an all-encompassing shot in a bit. If you make this coat, please make sure to tag me on socials because I want to see it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. And always remember to dream big and create with your heart. Bye guys, thanks for watching.